Respected Chair, Professor Sheikh Ishtaq Ahmed, Registrar MANUU, our today's keynote speaker, Professor Y. Chinna Reddy, Director CSEP JNU, Chinna Rao, Director CSEP JNU, our chief guest, Professor Parvez Nazir, Professor Department of History, Aligarh Muslim University, our guest of honor, Professor Rekha Pandey, former head Department of History, University of Hyderabad, Professor Rafullah Azmi, Director CSEP MANUU, Professor Danish Muin, Head Department of History, other dignitaries, colleagues, students and participants, a very warm good morning to all of you and adab. First of all, on behalf of CSEP MANUU, Al-Berumi Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, MANUU, and Department of History, welcome you all in this academic gathering. I do welcome all the guests who came here, especially the guests on the stage and off the stage. I thank you also for coming here and making this program a successful one. It is a great pleasure to have you all here for this seminar on exploring the dynamics of women's marginalization and in India, prospects and challenges. This seminar is jointly being organized by CSEP and Department of History. When we were discussing the theme, about the theme of the seminar, we had a long deliberation, the center, CSEP Center and the Department of History. And finally, we decided that we should have a theme where both the center as well as the department can contribute jointly. As a result of these deliberations, we have finalized theme marginalization and women. As you know that women and marginalization, it's a long duty process and which has its deep roots in history. So to understand this, how to measure this marginalization, we need experts, academicians who are working in different fields, but maybe their area of interest is same like gender or understanding gender and gender disparity. So this creates a scope for interdisciplinary, it has an interdisciplinary scope for this seminar. So as a result of it, we invited many, speakers belonging to different universities of Hyderabad as well as in Delhi or in other states, so who came here. I welcome you all. Now, as a part of tradition of MANUU, we would like to play our university Tarana first.
ये बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का, ये बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का। आओ सफ़र यहाँ से करे आसमान का, बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का। इल्मो कमाल फज़लो शेयारो शूर तक फैली है दिल नवाज महक दूर दूर तक। मिलता यहाँ निसाब है सारे जहान का, ये बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का, ये बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का। शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का। ग़र्बो जुनूब से हो के शर्क़ो वो शुमाल से, आगे बढ़ो ख़याल मिला दो ख़याल से। चर्चा हो कायनात में हिंदुस्तान का। ये बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का। फसले सदा बहार से बस्ती बसी रहे, मिलकर दुआ करो कि ये खेती हरी रहे। साया रहे सरों पे किसी साइबान का। सफ़र यहाँ से करे आसमान का। ये बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का। ये बाबे शहरे इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का।
Hope you might have enjoyed this new tarana. Let me tell you that this new tarana has been written by our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sayyid Anwar Hassan sir. We now want to felicitate our guest. For this, I would like to request Professor Iful Azmi, Director CSEP, to announce the names here, sir.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। सदर की इजाज़त से इस सेरेमनी को भी आगे ले जाते हैं। मैं सबसे पहले रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि मैडम रेखा पांडे साहिबा का इस्तकबाल किया जाए। उसके लिए मैं तहा साहब को, जो कि उनके स्टूडेंट रह चुके हैं, और साथ में सनीम फ़ातिमा मैडम से गुजारिश करूंगा कि एक सनीम फ़ातिमा मैडम जो है उनको शाल दें और तहा साहब उनको सैपलिंग दें। मैं दो लोगों को ज़हमत इसलिए दे रहा हूं चूँकि ये सेंटर फॉर इंक्लूज़न एंड एक्सक्लूज़न का सेंटर है। मैं इंक्लूज़न की कोशिश कर रहा हूं ताकि दो लोगों की शिरकत इसमें हो सके। तो प्लीज़ कि मैम सीनियर हैं, लेडी हैं, इसलिए फ़र्स्ट मैंने कहा कि इनका वेलकम ज़रूरी था। अब मैं रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं कि प्रोफेसर यगाति चिन्ना राव, जिन्होंने बहुत तकलीफ़ की और मैं उनका बहुत शुक्रगुज़ार हूं कि वो JNU से आए और बहुत शॉर्ट नोटिस पे आए। मैं तो उनका शुक्रिया बाद में करूंगा कि उनका फॉर्मल वेलकम किया जाए। उसके लिए मैं अपने सदर शोबा हिस्ट्री डिपार्टमेंट के दानिश मोइन साहब को और प्रोफेसर मोहम्मद हबीब साहब को दावत देता हूं कि वो लोग आएँ और उनकी शाल से और उससे जो है सैपलिंग से। प्लीज़ हबीब साहब, प्लीज़ दानिश भाई, प्लीज़ प्लीज़। अब मैं दरख्वास्त करता हूँ अपने ऑनरेबल रजिस्ट्रार हरदिल अजीज़ रजिस्ट्रार इश्तियाक साहब से नो इज़ ऑनरेबल, यू आर ऑनरेबल फॉर मी सर। सो उनसे दरख्वास्त करता हूँ कि वो और माई सेल्फ हम लोग चीफ़ गेस्ट मेहमान ख़ुसूसी हमारे जो हैं परवेज़ नज़ीर साहब हैं, उनका इस्तकबाल किया जाए और सैपलिंग से और उसके ज़रिए प्लीज़। कौन रहेगी? नहीं अभी तो रजिस्ट्रार साहब रहेगी ना। कहाँ गया वो, कहाँ गया? अब लास्ट में मैं प्रोफेसर सनीम फातिमा से दोबारा दरख्वास्त करता हूँ, उनकी ज़हमत दूंगा कि वो आएँ रजिस्ट्रार साहब को, और मैं भी उसमें शिरकत करूँगा। उनको हम लोग उनको इनके लिए करें जो, प्लीज़ मैम प्लीज़ आइए। तो क्या अपनों को ऐसे थोड़े किया जाता है।
मिनाज बैग 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 में रखो, बैग सर के बैग में, सर के बैग में। यस यस, थैंक यू सर। नाउ आई रिक्वेस्ट डायरेक्टर साहब अगेन, प्रोफेसर रफीउल्लाह आज़मी साहब, टू say something about CSEP and about this seminar, sir.
रजिस्ट्रार प्रोफेसर शेख इश्तियाक अहमद साहब, प्रोफेसर रेखा पांडे साहिबा, प्रोफेसर यगाति चिन्ना राव साहब, प्रोफेसर इश्तियाक नज़ीर साहब, मेरे सामने बैठे हुए मेरे बहुत बुज़ुर्ग और हरदिल अजीज़ प्रोफेसर दीपक कुमार साहब, जो कि हमारे डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ हिस्ट्री से एसोसिएटेड हैं। सर लेट आए इसलिए छुप गए पीछे कहीं, लेकिन मैंने अभी देखा। वैसे सर हमेशा साथ में पहले रहते हैं, लेकिन बाल समाऊ आज थोड़ा लेट हो गए। और बाकी जो सामने बैठे हुए अजीज़ हस्तियाँ, ख़ास से इम्तियाज़ प्रोफेसर इम्तियाज़ साहब, सनीम फातिमा साहिबा और दीगर हजरात का, और बच्चों का, स्टूडेंट्स का, सभी का खैर मकदम करता हूँ बहुत तहे दिल से। वेरी वार्म वेलकम। So, this is very indeed very pride moment, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for this very important seminar, which is on exploring dynamics of women's marginalization in India. This is challenges and prospects. This is particularly important because since I took the responsibilities, I was given the responsibility of the CSEP, and though we held there three programs, but I've been told that there was a long gap. There was not major national event for about 6-7 years or 10 years, something like that. So in that context, it became very, very important. And it is a kind of landmark in the context of the CSEP. So for me, it became like an academic festival. And that's why myself, I prepared like, wearing suit and tie. I requested Professor Danish Moin to do the same, because we are in academic collaboration with this. So because I feel that we should celebrate this moment. So that was the spirit in that context. When I was trying to revive the center, and because it is devoted to exclusion of the people, particularly women's, minorities, Dalits. These are three important segments of the excluded people. And then I also thought that let me initiate some important event on this women's marginalization first, as these days it is very buzzword that everywhere we talk about ladies first, ladies first. So I thought that in that spirit I should begin with this. So, because honestly speaking, this is not my cup of tea. I am a student, have been a student of for about 25 years of different subjects of history, politics, history, etc., etc. So, in my department of history, where basically I am posted, Dr. Parvez Khande, who has been teaching a paper on women and gender issues. So, I requested him that you please come forward, and I requested Professor Enrichment also that let us collaborate for this kind of exercise, and then it was agreed in that context. And then Dr. Parvez Khande, it is basically Dr. Parvez Khande's whole program, because he conceptualized, prepared the notes, and then contracted people and all kind of things it was done. I was basically trying to help and facilitate this movement and that. So we tried to, our objective was, our target was that we will not be so open that we will have to have parallel sessions and 60, 70 papers, because then that gives very less time for discussions and presentations of the papers. So we became very focused. And since beginning, I said to Parvez, let us try to target only 20 papers approximately, and so that after this program is over, we will try to get it published with leading publishers. So that way, alhamdulillah, I'm very happy to announce that we received more than 25 papers, and some papers are still knocking. Some presenters, good presenters, are still knocking from Jamia and SU and other places. But Parvez has shut the door very tightly. I said, let us wait. And so that way, this seminar is, though it was organized in a very few days, it was conceptualized in first week of February, and then it was hurriedly taken up. And as we all are aware, those who are from the MANUU, that there is a lot of activities. So I was scheduling it in first week of March, but somehow we have to prepone it, and we have to hold it in within 10-15 days. That is how. So I think that it is reasonably successful in that way. And if there is any shortcoming, that will be mine. And if it is successful, then it is all to Parvez and organizing teams, volunteers, etc., etc., those who have been working a lot behind the scenes. So that is how it is there. Let me briefly say something about this theme of this seminar. Though I thought that Dr. Parvez will try to throw the light on that, but somehow he left it to me. Though it's not my cup of tea, as I said, but still I will try to say a few words, and briefly, because we started a little bit late in that sense. See, the whole human journey of evolution and development, if you go through the glance of the history of the pages of the history, you'll find that since very old times, somehow women, which is better half of the population, almost 50% of the populations, have been subjugated for a variety of reasons, sometimes due to patriarchal setup, sometimes due to role of religion, and all kind of state politics and that. Since this happened since time immemorials. But coming to this modern period, due to very apathetic conditions of the women all over the world, not only in India, though we will be focusing in India, in the Indian context, what has happened that there was need of some kind of movement for that, and then feminist movement started. Toward the end of the 19th and early 20th century, in Europe and Western countries, that was started. That was the first phase. That has been divided in phases, and that basically was related to only securing voting rights for the women's that was denied there in that context. So that was happened in that sense. Then in 1960s, Western countries and most particularly United States of America, this whole concept of this idea of feminist movement grew up. And it became buzzword. And that was the second phase. That had been divided in waves. That is called in Western countries, it is waves. There were second waves in that way. That became more comprehensive, and that was in alignment with the anti-colonial movements and then rights, securing rights for the black people and other minority groups. So that was in that alignment and synchronization that was taking place. That women also became important focus of that. Then third wave we started in 1990s, and then fourth wave is now it is digital wave that is also being talked about. So that way it is this issues of women empowerment, gender equity, quest for gender equity, and all kind of has become buzzword these days. This is also means largely the goal of SDG, which is talked about at the international level, and of which India is also signatories and that. So in that context, in India also, this movement also witnessed this kind of ideas, feminist movement, that was basically talking about this improvement of socio-economic conditions of the women, and that started within the colonial era, and various kind of reform movements were launched, in which it was attempted that women should be brought into public and their rights should be secured and they should be given more education, better educations, modern education, etc., etc. That quest was going on like. Then we got independence. After independence, what has happened that we know situation was very pathetic, all kind of problems and challenges as a new nations we were facing. Then what was happening? That in that context, lot of policy measures and decisions were formulated, taken, and even provisions were made in the constitution also to secure the rights and dignified place for the women that way. That was there. But despite all kind of policy measures, efforts, etc., I'm sure that there is a lot of development. Transformation has taken place. Women are now getting more and more visible places in all walks of life. There's no doubt about it. But still there is a miles to go. And in case of India, we must also note that there is some kind of heterogeneity. There is not uniform condition of women in all sections of the society. Take the case of the example of the Muslim women. There is some kind of different issues and challenges. Some kind of Dalit women, there might be some kind of different specific challenges. But that way, women as such, as a group, can't be segmented in one section that way. That is also one of the important challenges. So that is also nuanced, and very heterogeneity has to be taken into account. I will stop here by saying just narrating one example that no doubt this journey of women development has been very uneven, trajectory has been not uniform throughout the country. In case of particularly Muslim women, which is now talked about a lot, in case of triple talaq and other issues in that way, government of India, politics and many kind of things has happened. But I just wanted to share a very personal personal experience. When I was 30-35 years back, in my villages, I belongs to Eastern UP Azamgarh, there was less, very, very dismal education seen in the context of women. Generally, male child used to be given priority, they should be given education. At that point of time, when I reached this marriage age, my family was looking for the girls to marry, so there was very few available for these marriages. Now situation is the other way around. Girls are more educated, getting more educated. In context of Azamgarh, I see that is now better educated women are available, less educated men are there. So that is a kind of reverse dichotomy has taken place. And that is also has been testified by the recent, I think 1 or 2 years back survey, some Government of India survey, I forgot the name of these statistics, that says that women enrollment ratios in all higher education, including other middle and primary, that has gone up in the last few years. So that is a kind of heartening, that is a kind of encouraging sign. But still, I believe there is a miles to go away. We have to do a lot for that. But in that context, there is a lot of challenges as feminist movement, as individual rights, etc. So that is, West is facing, we are going towards that situation. Sometimes we copy, that West is facing very kind of different challenges. Transformation or development of women has taken place, but then collapse of the family system is also one of the important challenges of the development. This is also one of the important dimensions that is emerging in that sense, because women became more powerful, more economically independent, then it is naturally they assert their rights, then family equilibrium in the family gets disturbed. So that is a kind of new challenges are taking place. I am sure that presenters, many of them are IFLU, SEO, and Jamia Millia Islamia, and our Professor Chinnarao himself, and Professor Sahab, Rekha Pandey will throw light on different aspect of that. With these words, I take leave. And but before leave, I would like to thank particularly Professor Chinnarao. I just spoke about 10 days back, and I was worried that how to find a kind of keynote speaker who is more suitable. So, because he is also heading the director of the responsibilities of the directorship of the CSEP in JNU, and he is very prolific writers and thinkers and academic. So I requested him, and he spoke him for about, he was very kind enough, he gave a lot of time, so almost 45 minutes we spoke. So then he said, I will come, and that was very heartening. Similarly, I spoke to Professor Nazir Sahab also at very short notice because it was hurriedly organized. He was also kind enough to come to this seminar and to make it success. That is very important things. And then our Professor Rekha Pandey, who lives in city of Hyderabad, and during the last 6 months or so, since when I became the director of the CSEP, I invited him for the second time. He always very readily agreed if she is available here. That is her generosity, magnanimity, that she always try to come MANUU. वो कहती हैं कि MANUU मेरा सेकेंड होम है, एंड मैम ने हमेशा इसको सपोर्ट किया. और साथ में मैं शुक्रिया अदा करूँगा, बहुत तहे दिल से शुक्रिया अदा करूँगा अपने रजिस्ट्रार साहब का, हरदिल अजीज़ रजिस्ट्रार साहब का, कि जिन्होंने बहुत ही उससे जनरसिटी के साथ कि फिर जबकि डिपार्टमेंट सीसेप का टेन्योर अभी रुका हुआ है, टेन्योर बेसिस पे चलता है, पैसे नहीं आ रहे, 3-4 करोड़ रुपया हमारा यूजीसी के ऊपर ड्यू हो रहा है, MANUU अपने तरफ से पैसे को खर्च करके दे रही. उस कंटेक्स्ट में भी इन्होंने पूरी तरह से फैसिलिटेट किया, फाइल्स को बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़ाया और बहुत ही दिल खोल के रीजनेबल अमाउंट हमारे लिए सैंक्शन किया, जिसकी वजह से हम 3-4 लोगों को JNU जामिया और अलीगढ़ से बुला सके, वरना फिर मुश्किल हो जाता और बाकी लोगों को बुला सके. सो इसलिए इसके लिए बहुत शुक्रिया सर आपका. और सामने बैठे हुए महफिल में सभी लोगों का, ख़ासकर दीपक साहब, दानिश मोइन साहब, अफरोज़ साहब, सनीम फाता मैडम, इम्तियाज़ भाई, और हमारी जो मेहमान आए हुए हैं प्रोफेसर फिरदौस अजमत साहिबा और डॉक्टर फ़ायज़, और बाकी जो हजरात हैं यहाँ पे बैठे हुए स्टूडेंट्स का, सबका शुक्रिया. साथ में ये बिल्कुल अर्ज़ कर दूँ एक बार और कि ये बगैर टीम के मुमकिन नहीं हो सकता. टीम इसके लिए बहुत ही सिंसियरली काम कर रही थी. उस टीम के वॉलंटियर्स का, सभी ऑर्गेनाइजिंग मेंबर्स का और सभी हजरात का, ख़ास से फैकल्टी मेंबर्स का कुछ टाउन मिला, इस्लामिक स्टडीज़ का ख़ास तौर से जिन्होंने 2-3 पेपर्स भी कंट्रीब्यूट किया. सो आई एम रियली ग्रेटफुल टू ऑल ऑफ देम एंड थैंक यू फॉर लिसनिंग टू मी. आई hope that other deliberations will take place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before we request our guest of honor, Professor Rekha Pandey, let me briefly introduce her. I personally believe that, not personally, Rekha Pandey ma'am is a known figure. Those who are working on women or women-related issues, she or he might be very familiar with Professor Rekha Pandey. But still, let me briefly introduce her. Professor Rekha Pandey, she retired from Department of History, University of Hyderabad, where she was head also. Not only that, a few days back I had a chance to meet Madam, and Madam was showing me her library and telling me about her education and all that. Let me tell you that she has almost 40 years of teaching and research experience. She served in 3 universities. The very first university where she taught was Allahabad University. I guess ma'am has done masters from that university. And then she came Hyderabad, and she joined Hyderabad Central University, where she was working first in the Department of History. Then she was the head for Center for Women's Studies. Apart from that, she worked in MANUU also. Let me tell you that ma'am has a close association with MANUU from the very beginning, when this university was at its initial stage. She was part of the founding members of the Center for Women's Studies in MANUU as well as in HCU. And she also taught, though for a short time, I guess, in IIIT Hyderabad. Apart from that, let me tell you that ma'am has, as I said that few days back, I went, she showed me her library. I thought it's a general library. Then she said that this is my collection only. So, so she has almost 20 books to her credit, more than 150 articles. I guess this is 3-4 years back resume I am reading. I'm sure that it may be touching 200 now. Apart from that, she is associated with different committees, administrative committees or academic committees, either in HCU, in Hyderabad, UGC, ICHR. Not only that, she has visited many countries as a part of fellow, either in US or UK. She was telling me about her students. She said that my almost 15 students are working in central universities. 15 students, those whom she guided as MPhil or PhD. And apart from that, there is Taha sir is here. He's the example. So with this brief introduction, I would like to request Professor Rekha Madam to give her talk.
Good morning, everyone. Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed, Professor Chinna Rao, Parvez Nazir, Professor Rafetullah Azmi. I can see lots of friends around. Professor Deepak Kumar, Danish Moin, Afroz, Seema Fatima, Sanim Fatima, Firdaus, Ishtiaq, Ziauddin. मेरा बहुत क्लोज एसोसिएशन रहा है मानू से, और आप लोग तो तब यहाँ पे होंगे भी नहीं. 2005 में मैं 2 साल के सबैटिकल के लिए यहाँ आई थी, 2005 to 7. और उस समय केवल एक मेन बिल्डिंग होती थी और पूरा ओपन लैंड था. लेकिन ये सारी जो बिल्डिंग्स अब हम देख रहे हैं, उनकी फाउंडेशन हमारे सामने ही ले हुई थी. तो बहुत खुशी होती है जब मैं यहाँ आती हूँ और आज ये पूरी यूनिवर्सिटी को भरा पूरा देखती हूँ, एंड सच एन एक्टिव लाइफ. सो इट रियली गिव्स मी अ ग्रेट प्लेजर. नाउ द बिगेस्ट डिसएडवांटेज आई फील इज़, मैंने ऑर्गेनाइजर्स से टाइम नहीं पूछा कि मेरे को कितना समय बोलना पड़ेगा. आई एज्यूम्ड ऑन माई ओन, माई मिस्टेक, that I will be speaking for an hour. I can cut it down for half an hour, और मैंने देखा मेरे को तो 10 मिनट बोलना है. So anyway, I'll try to, नहीं, I will quickly try to, I prepared a presentation, I'll try to finish it in 15 minutes. Now, we are all talking of marginalization. What do we mean by marginalization? When we systematically exclude people from meaningful participation in economic, social, political or cultural life, and we do not give them opportunities to fulfill themselves as human beings, that is what we refer to as marginalization. And gender is at the base of many of the inequalities that we see, primarily because of the gender differences. And therefore, I really feel very happy that you have chosen this theme. And when we talk of, subjugation and arbitrariness, we find that, there is a lot of concepts of exclusion which apply to, if you look at the language, you look at the total, process. Many times we don't even realize that we have so many biases which are there. and often it leads to a lot of disclosure. In fact, if you look at the whole concept, look at our patriarchal structure, it gives, many women are not empowered in it. We have so many disadvantages. And Max Weber has used the concept of social closure. And he talks in terms of, how people are closed from certain areas. And this is what I'm going to focus on. और ये आज इसलिए भी बहुत ज़रूरी हो जाता है क्योंकि अब हम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स की बात कर रहे हैं. 2030 तक हमने ये वादा किया था कि आफ्टर कोविड वी विल बी एबल टू रियली अचीव मैनी ऑफ दीज गोल्स. ये सारे जो मिलेनियम डेवलपमेंट गोल्स थे 2015 में रखे गए थे ताकि एक प्रॉपर इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ हो, एनवायरनमेंट सस्टेनेबिलिटी हो. एंड टोटल 17 गोल्स हैं इसमें, जिसमें जेंडर भी एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट गोल नंबर 5 की जो हम बात करते हैं. So let me, I thought I will just focus on 3 major aspects, looking at economy, looking at society, and talk a little about politics कि कहाँ पे इतना ज़्यादा exclusion है. और जब हम gender economics की बात करते हैं तो it really helps us to understand disparity and inclusion. It is very important to talk about the gender gap index report. ये जो जेंडर गैप रिपोर्ट आई थी, दिस केम इन 2006. वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम जो था, इट मेड अ फ्रेमवर्क एंड इट वाज प्राइमरली फोकसिंग ऑन 4 areas: economic, education, health and political criteria. And it is not possible, you have more than 152 countries, तो हर country का तो आप डिटेल नहीं दे सकते. तो उन्होंने क्या किया, पूरे वर्ल्ड को 8 भागों में डिवाइड किया है. एंड वी आर पार्ट ऑफ साउथ एशिया. तो साउथ एशिया में more than 860 women live, और more than 3/4 of these are in India. इंडिया में हमारी मैक्सिमम women हैं, और हमारा जो रैंक है इट इज़ रियली लो. 112 था earlier, with 66.8%. और अब जाके हमने थोड़ी सी प्रोग्रेस की है. 2022 में हमारा रैंक 135 था, और आउट ऑफ अब हम वी हैव मूव टू 127 लास्ट ईयर. 146 कंट्रीज़ की इसमें स्टडी हुई थी. और जो अगर ये रिपोर्ट आपको इंटरनेट में मिल जाएगी, इट्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रिपोर्ट फॉर हुएवर इज इंटरेस्टेड इन जेंडर टू हैव अ लुक. एंड इट क्लियरली पॉइंट्स आउट कि जो इकोनॉमिक गैप है इंडिया में वो बहुत डीप रन करता है. एंड 2006 से इट इज़ कंटिन्यूसली इंक्रीजिंग. वी हैव क्लोज्ड अ लिटिल ऑफ दिस जेंडर गैप, बट हमारी जो इकोनॉमिक पैरिटी है वो केवल 36.7% है. और ज़्यादातर men and women are engaged in economic activities. Women mostly are in unorganized sector, जो informal sector हम बात करते हैं. And since women are more in informal sector, उनकी earnings बहुत less है. और ये रिपोर्ट बात करती है कि political empowerment हमारा slightly better है, because we have lot of women leaders. But something, which is very important in 2020, ये ग्लोबल जेंडर गैप रिपोर्ट ने बात की थी कि we have to talk about women. Unless we involve the women, no economic system in the world or no labor market in the world can function unless women are involved. So women become very crucial to this. Now, when you look at the whole process of gender and economics, yes, today, you have more and more women who are involved in the economic market, and yet, the salaries are not so much. We know for a fact that women form 50% of the world population. अगर आप दुनिया का पूरा काम देखेंगे, 2/3 of the work is done by women, and yet women are also 2/3 of the population is illiterate. अगर हम पूरे वर्ल्ड की प्रॉपर्टी को कंबाइन करते हैं, women own only 1/100 of this property. These are statistics from the UNO. It's not something which I am saying. And पूरे वर्ल्ड में 70% of the poor are women. And by and large, women are only considered as secondary workers. They are not the main workers. मेरी अभी recently एक किताब आई है रोटलेट से, Women's Work in the Unorganized Sector. मैंने बीड़ी इंडस्ट्री को देखा है. सारा काम वहाँ पे विमेन करती हैं. मैं एक उसमें जब फील्ड में गई थी तो एक फैमिली में 2 लड़के, एक 10th पढ़ रहा था और एक ने 11th करके छोड़ दिया था. There were 5 members in that family और सारा जो फैमिली रन करता है वो लड़की और माँ के बीड़ी बनाने से करता है. तो मैं ऐसे ही बात कर रही थी तो मैंने वो लड़के से कहा, मैंने कहा तुम क्यों नहीं इनमें इनका हाथ बटाते हो, ज़्यादा इनकम बनेगी. तो वो मेरे से कहता, मैडम आप क्या बात करें, ये तो औरतों के काम होते हैं. So, you know, these differences between women's work and men's work. Most of the men take, in BD industry, I also saw that, you know, you take the ready-made produce, they go to the karkhana, they go to the main factory, they bring the raw material. But the real work is done by the women. And yet we consider women as secondary workers. There is so much exploitation. You know, मैं इस इंडस्ट्री में involved हूँ from 1990s. मैं आपको बताऊँ, you know, how much is the process. जो कॉन्ट्रैक्टर है वो केवल पत्ते तोड़ के उनके घर में छोड़ देता है. और जैसे हम लोग ऊन के गोले बनाते हैं, वो ऊन पड़ी रहती है, आपको उसका पहले गोला बनाना पड़ता है. तो ये औरतों को रात भर पहले पत्तियां निकाल करके पानी में भिगाना पड़ता है, फिर दूसरे दिन धूप में उनको सुखाना पड़ता है. और आप फिर जब सूख जाते हैं तो हाथ में एक पत्ता लेके आप साइड से उसको काटते हो, उसमें कुछ उनको निकोटीन पाउडर और कुछ दिया जाता है, वो करके आप फोल्ड करते हो और दोनों एजेस को टर्न करके तागा बांधते हैं. दिस इज द लेबर इन्वॉल्व इन मेकिंग 1 बीड़ी. और जब मैंने अपना काम स्टार्ट किया था, 1000 बीड़ी बनाने के उनको 45 रुपये मिल रहे थे. So you can very well imagine how much exploitation is. Today they are getting 110 rupees, which is really not much. And you know, so much of work is involved, and it is primarily a women's work. And many of the household, if you look at the 2011 census, 27 million household, you know, are headed by women. And we find that इनकी अर्निंग जो है 5,000 रुपये से कम है, and only 0.89% earn more than 10,000 a month. तो यू नो इतनी इश्यूज़ है, विक्टिमाइजेशन, वल्नरेबिलिटी और वायलेंस के भी बहुत सारे इश्यूज़ हैं दैट वी हैव टू रियली टॉक अबाउट. एंड नेचुरली यू नो ये सारे काम जो women करते हैं, it is also a lot of occupational health hazard when they are doing, you know, ये औरतें जो सफ़र करती हैं बीड़ी वर्क में, it is not because they are smoking the बीड़ीज, because they are inhaling that dust while doing their work. So, you know, there is so much of a gap in their earnings. You have more women in unorganized sector. You know, this is my work on the BD industry. So there is so much of marginalization of women. If you look in economic sector, you know, today, how do we define, look at the definitions. You ask any person, what does your mother do? Oh, वो तो कुछ नहीं करती हैं. And very proudly you say कि मेरी mother or my wife is a teacher, my mother or wife is a doctor. But women who are staying at home, oh, she does nothing. Then you ask, who does the cooking? My mother does. Who does the cleaning? My mother does. And that is not work. Why? Because economists have told us work is something for which you get paid. So if I come to a university or a college or a school and I'm teaching, I get a salary, that is work. But if I'm teaching my children, after all, that's my duty. अगर मैं किसी और के घर जाके खाना बनाती हूँ and I get a salary, that is work. लेकिन अपने घर में वो तो मेरी ड्यूटी है कि खाना आपको बनाना है. And all these definitions have a lot of impact in our policy also. अगर आपको याद है, if you look at the census, you know, in 2000 census, they go to every house and they say, what do you do? And women also internalize, say, oh, I do nothing. So you take nothing, nothing, nothing. One woman is a teacher, one woman is a doctor. And finally, जब आप gross national product country का calculate करते हैं, more than 80 to 85% women are just sitting and doing nothing. So there was a big demand from the women's movement. They said we should change our questions. Now they don't go and ask, what do you do? But they ask a woman, how do you spend your time? And she says, I do so many hours of cooking, so many hours of cleaning. And there have been lots of studies abroad that if you start calculating the work which women does, you know, all in these all unmonetized services, many of the men will not be able to pay their salaries also. and yet we say, oh, ये तो कुछ नहीं करती हैं. We give value to women who go outside and work because they carry the double burden of work. वो तो हम सोचते हैं कि घर में इसकी कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. So, we need to really change these definitions. हमारी सोसाइटी जो है वो शुरू से पेट्रियार्कल है. And there is so much of a, importance given to son. अथर्वे जो 3500 ईयर्स पहले थी, उसमें जब वाइफ प्रेग्नेंट हो जाती है, दोनों हस्बैंड वाइफ जाके प्रेयर करते हैं, ओ गॉड ग्रांट अस अ सन हियर एंड अ डॉटर एल्सवेयर. एंड एक और देयर इज अनदर प्रेयर व्हिच सेज लेट यू गिव बर्थ टू अ सन एंड आफ्टर हिम लेट अ मेल बी बॉर्न, मे दाउ बी अ मदर ऑफ सन्स. दूधो नहाओ पूतो फलो, मे यू बी द मदर ऑफ 100 सन्स. ये सब आशीर्वाद हमारे उसमें, बिकॉज देर इज सो मच ऑफ अ इम्पॉर्टेंस गिवन. इनफैक्ट पूरे व्रत हैं, अगर आप एंशिएंट टेक्स्ट को पढ़िए, पुण्यवंसा व्रत है कि आपके केवल एक लड़के को आप जन्म देंगे. और ऐसे ऐसे वो दिए कि इफ़ यू डोंट बिहेव प्रॉपरली, there is a capacity of that fetus to convert from a male to a female fetus. Fetus भी आपका बदल जाएगा, female fetus हो जाएगा. And the main purpose for this is, if you look at the role of a, गृहस्थ आश्रम में हम लोग 3 ड्यूटीज़ को फुलफिल करने के लिए पैदा हुए हैं. 1 to God, to sages and to our ancestors. And in तीनों में son is very important. बिना सन के you cannot perform any of these duties, and therefore son becomes very important right from the beginning. अगर आप हमारे वैदिक सोसाइटी को देखिए, सन की इतनी इम्पोर्टेंस है कि आप जो बेटे को पुत्र कहते हैं, पूत से ये शब्द आया है कि आप अपने सारे डेट्स अपने बेटे पे डाल सकते हैं, बेटी पे आप नहीं डाल सकते हैं. तो वो आपके डेप्ट्स को कैरी करता है और ये आपको हेल्थ से प्रोटेक्ट करता है. एंड देन विष्णु स्मृति सेज वी आर टॉकिंग नॉट ओनली ऑफ अ सन, थ्रू अ सन अ फादर कॉन्कर्स द वर्ल्ड, थ्रू अ ग्रैंडसन ही ऑब्टेन्स इमॉर्टैलिटी, थ्रू अ सन्स ग्रैंडसन ही गेन्स द वर्ल्ड ऑफ द सन. तो केवल आप सारे पुराने टेक्स्ट पढ़िए, केवल लड़कों की बात है. 100 लड़के हो रहे हैं किसी फैमिली में, यू हैव मोर देन 1000. लड़कियों की तो हम बात ही नहीं करते हैं. तो नेचुरली उस समय जब हमारा 4000 साल पुराना माइंडसेट है, तो इतनी जल्दी तो चेंज नहीं होगा. आई डू अ पॉडकास्ट, आई विल शेयर द एड्रेस विद यू. आई कलेक्टेड अ लॉट ऑफ सेइंग्स अराउंड द वर्ल्ड related to women. And every year, because it is a patriarchal society, you almost have the same sayings throughout the world. एक औरत को only if she is a productive machine, we give her an importance. In spite of economy, better economy, we are all well read, education has come in, लेकिन mindset हम लोगों का change नहीं हुआ है. आज हमने क्या किया है, सोफिस्टिकेटेड मेडिकल टेक्नोलॉजी को, हमारी सारी एजुकेशन को, वी हैव कन्वर्टेड इट टू यूज इट सो दैट वी कैन ओनली हैव सन्स. सारा ग्लोबल एक्सपोजर, एजुकेशन, एक्सपेंसिव टेक्नोलॉजी, इसलिए हमारे माइंडसेट को बिल्कुल चेंज नहीं किया है. आज कितने स्ट्रिंजेंट लॉज हैं. आप किसी, यू कैन नॉट फाइंड आउट द सेक्स ऑफ द चाइल्ड और इट्स अ क्राइम. लेकिन अगर आप लोगों ने, आमिर खान ने एक शो रन किया था, इफ़ यू रिमेंबर, कुछ साल पहले, सत्यमेव जयते, तो वो डॉक्टर्स लोग आके बोलते हैं जय माता की, इसका मतलब लड़की है, और जय हर हर महादेव लड़का है, चलो लड्डू खिलाओ मीन्स लड़का है, बर्फ़ी खिलाओ लड़की है, एंड देन दे गो फॉर फीमेल फीट. तो इसका क्या हुआ है, हमारा इम्पैक्ट जो है सेक्स रेशियो में बहुत बुरी तरह हुआ है. If you look at our sex ratio from 1901, for every 1000 boys, we had 972 girls. Today, it has fallen to 914 girls for every 1000 boys. Look at the decline. पूरा country में we are seeing a big decline. आज भी, तेलुगु की एक proverb है कि bringing up a daughter, लड़कियों को पालना तो ऐसा जैसे कि आप दूसरे के बगीचे में पानी दे रहे हैं, क्योंकि ये इनबिल्ट है कि आपको लड़की को शादी करके दूसरी जगह, घी और लड़की केवल एक टाइम तक के लिए ठीक होती है, उनको जितनी जल्दी डिस्पोज ऑफ करो, इट इज़ बेटर. एंड इट इज़ बेटर टू बी बॉर्न एज अ ट्री इन अ जंगल दैन टू बी बॉर्न एज अ, मैं खाली तेलंगाना के प्रोवर्ब्स कर रही हूँ. अगर आप पूरे कंट्री में देखिए, लड़की की शादी करना तो एक अश्वमेध यज्ञ जो बहुत मुश्किल होता था उसको वैसा माना गया है. तो यू नो इट इज़ देयर टुडे ऑल्सो. सो जब हम जेंडर इक्वालिटी की बात करते हैं, वी शुड टॉक अबाउट दीज एज ह्यूमन राइट्स इश्यूज़. यू नो मेरी क्लास में बहुत डिस्कशंस होती थी जब स्टूडेंट से, तो बहुत सारे लड़के कहते थे, मैम आई डोंट बिलीव इन डाउरी, मैं तो डाउरी नहीं लूँगा, बट आई कांट से एनीथिंग टू माई पेरेंट्स. You know, what will I tell my parents? You know, they say, this is the girls, let the girls decide. You know, it is their issue. So I used to say, fine, आज तुम्हारी शादी हो रही है तो गर्ल्स का इशू है, कल जब तुम अपनी लड़की की शादी करोगे तब किसका इशू होगा? So we have to really talk about women's issues not as just issues for women but human issues. इससे, you know, once we deal with these issues, our society will also progress. And we will be able to bring a better equitable gender division. दो बहुत important concept है, एक gender equality है. Gender equality हमारी long term goal है, you know, जहाँ पे हम discriminate नहीं करते हैं, where we treat both the sex as equal. और दूसरा है gender equity. Gender equity का मतलब है we have to be fair to women. You know, and in order to be fair, we have to, you know, make up for the social disadvantage which women have suffered for so many years. We have to provide a equal playing field. And from equity, we will lead to equity. To give you this example, equality की अगर हम बात करते हैं, कुछ लड़कों को अगर फुटबॉल मैच देखना है वहाँ पे, तो सबको अगर हमने सेम स्टूल्स प्रोवाइड कर दिए तो वो इक्वल है. लेकिन जब हम इक्विटी की बात करते हैं, जो लंबा है उसको हम ज़्यादा बढ़ा देंगे, जिसको ज़रूरत नहीं है उसको नो नीड टू गिव, तो ये इक्विटी की बात हो रही है. एक जो बहुत बड़ा मेजर इशू है वो वायलेंस है. यू नो, इनफैक्ट आज हम लोग सब न्यूज़पेपर देखते हैं, हम लोग सब टीवी न्यूज़ देखते हैं, एंड वी हैव बिकम सो इम्यून टू इट दैट वी डोंट इवन टॉक अबाउट इट. यू नो, ये केवल नंबर्स में स्टैटिस्टिक्स हो गया है. और ये it cuts across income, class and culture. And in fact, we have to recognize that violence is because of the power relation. Unequal power relationship जो है family में, society में, और हमारी you know जो concept of sexuality, cultural ideology, doctrine of privacy है, they all lead to gender violence. In fact, आज सब जगह है, होम में, स्कूल में, वर्क प्लेस, पब्लिक स्पेसेस. आज आई वॉज इन कमिटी ऑफ सेक्शुअल हैरेसमेंट इन माई यूनिवर्सिटी. वी वर सीइंग अ लॉट ऑफ केसेस ऑफ इवन साइबर स्पेस में जब वायलेंस हो रहा है. Because, you know, the person sitting behind things, he is at the, you know, he is at the corner of, he is sitting behind the computer, he is an unknown person. अगर हम वायलेंस को मेजर करें, ऑफिशियल स्टैटिस्टिक्स केवल लास्ट का जो ग्रे एरिया है वो दिखाती है, बट जो रिपोर्टेड है वो थोड़ा आगे है. अगर आप सर्वेस करें आपको और मिलेगा, लेकिन रियलिटी जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा है. इनफैक्ट यू नो, जब भी वायलेंस होता है औरतें सीधे जाके तो पुलिस स्टेशन नहीं जाती हैं ना, दे रियली ट्राई टू टॉलरेट, डील विद इट. एंड चाहे आप प्री नेटल में देखें, इन्फेंसी, चाइल्डहुड, एडोलेसेंट, रिप्रोडक्टिव ओल्ड एज, यू नो, हर एक स्टेज में देयर इज़ अ लॉट ऑफ वायलेंस. और ये वायलेंस जो है वो एशियन कल्चर में कुछ ज़्यादा ही है. वाई? वॉट हैपेंड इन पार्टीशन? You know, Muslim men were raping Hindu women, they were cutting off their private parts, Hindu men were raping Muslim women. It was not that they were taking revenge against those women, but they wanted to show that community that you are not man enough to protect your women. आज भी जब कहीं पे भी कास्ट वायलेंस होता है, सबसे पहले it is the women who suffer. Why? Because हमको पूरे एशियन कल्चर में ये बताया गया है कि masculinity is defined at a women's एक्सपेंस. जो ऑनर है घर का वो विमेन में रेस्ट करता है. एंड सो यू नो, जब कम्युनल क्लैशेस होते हैं, कास्ट क्लैशेस होते हैं, इट इज़ द विमेन हु सफ़र. यू नो, हमारा सारा सोशलाइजेशन प्रोसेस इसकी तरफ है. और सबसे वर्स्ट एरिया जो है वो साउथ एशिया है. यू नो, विमेन हैव अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग जेनेटिक बायोलॉजिकल एडवांटेज. कोई भी, you know, women survive, a girl child survives much more than a male child. Developed countries में women की life expectancy जो है वो 7 years more than men है. But ये South Asian region में केवल 1 year more than men है. And this is the worst statistics in the world, lowest in the world. these were some of the books which I did on gender violence. Violence, हमको ये समझना पड़ेगा कि it is not just a man beating his wife or any women member. Violence का एक economic aspect है, उसका एक social aspect है, उसका एक political aspect है. पूरे वर्ल्ड में अगर हम कैलकुलेट करें, more than 14.76 trillion a year is spent on violence on every person alive. अगर हम उसको इन रुपीज़ में कन्वर्ट करेंगे तो 1,48 and 811 crores. ये these are the figures by the Institute of Economic and Peace. और वायलेंस जब होता रहता है सोसाइटी में तो यू कैन नेवर एलिवेट योरसेल्फ फ्रॉम पॉवर्टी. women would have lot of cost. अगर वायलेंस की वजह से उसको हॉस्पिटल जाना है, उसको हॉस्पिटल में इलाज करना है तो दैट विल कॉस्ट. अगर उनको सेपरेट होना, लीगल कॉस्ट इन्वॉल्व होंगे. So it has an economic aspect. It means loss for the employer who's employing that woman. It also means loss for that woman who is working. So we have to understand violence having an economic cost. It also has a social cost. क्योंकि हमने फैमिली को एक इंस्टीट्यूशन दिखाया है कि it's a very viable institution and its whole stability is threatened. What decisions will women take with regards to health, nutrition, education if they live in an environment where there is violence? It limits women's decision on reproductive health and many outcomes. So, हम क्या सिखाते हैं फैमिली में? अगर जहाँ पे फादर मदर को बीट करता है, बच्चों के सामने हम क्या एग्जाम्पल सेट करते हैं कि आप केवल एक थप्पड़ मार के अपने मर्जी से कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. So we have to understand that violence also has a social cost. इसका एक पॉलिटिकल कॉस्ट भी है क्योंकि आज हम सब एम्पावरमेंट की बात करते हैं, women's empowerment. And if women continue to be beaten, what empowerment are we talking about? UNDP में पहली बार 1994 में एक रिपोर्ट निकाली थी जहाँ पे उन्होंने बताया था कि फंडामेंटल गोल ऑफ डेवलपमेंट इज़ ह्यूमन सिक्योरिटी. इससे पहले 94 से पहले जब हम सिक्योरिटी की बात करते थे, हम केवल टेररिज्म की बात करते थे. टेररिज्म, इंटरस्टेट, इंटरडिस्ट्रिक्ट, इंटरबॉर्डर टेररिज्म. But first time this report said that security has to start from home. Unless women feel secure at home, we cannot have any kind of human security. So, they really change the whole definition. So, we have to really stand up and stop violence. एक और बहुत important aspect जो है violence का, it is sexual harassment. इससे पहले कोई नाम नहीं था sexual harassment का. जब हम लोग आप लोगों की तरह young थे, we called it life. कि ठीक है, आपको कोई भी लड़का छेड़ सकता, आपको कोई भी लड़का कुछ भी बोल सकता है, and you have to deal with it क्योंकि आप women हो. I remember इलाहाबाद में, I have a lot of friends from इलाहाबाद. मेरे घर से I used to stay near High Court. यूनिवर्सिटी जो थी वो hardly it used to be about in 35 minutes I could reach. बट मेरे को पहुंचने में 1.5 घंटा लग जाता था. आई यूज टू गो इन अ साइकिल क्योंकि 3-4 लड़के आ जाएंगे, वो आपके बगल में साइकिल चलाएंगे, आप फिर फास्ट जाओगे, उनसे आगे जाओगे, वो भी फास्ट आएंगे, फिर आप स्लो हो जाओगे. तो वो पूरे जितने भी दिन मैं यूनिवर्सिटी जाती थी, वी यूज टू डील विद दैट. लेकिन उस समय हम लोगों को कुछ मालूम नहीं था कि हम इसके अगेंस्ट कुछ कर सकते हैं. टुडे एटलीस्ट वी नो दैट यू कैन कंप्लेन अबाउट इट. तो ये इट वॉज अर्लियर ओनली लाइफ. पहली बार लिन फैरले ने 1978 में एक किताब सेक्सुअल शेकडाउन में ये यूज़ किया था. 79 में कैथरीन मैकनन ने इसके बारे में फिर से बात की और बहुत सारे लेजिस्लेशन आए. इसका बहुत इम्पैक्ट होता है अगर सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट कंटिन्यू रहता है. विमेन आइदर प्रोटेस्ट एंड क्विट. बहुत सारे लोगों ने इसको साइकोलॉजिकल रेप बोला है. विमेन फील सो नर्वस, इनसिक्योर, उनकी मोबिलिटी रिस्ट्रिक्ट हो जाती है, दे कैन नॉट यूज़ पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट. आई वॉज इन बेजिंग फ्यू ईयर्स बैक. किसी फ्रेंड्स के घर से हम लोग डिनर करके आ रहे थे. जब रात को 2-2:30 बजे वो हमको छोड़ने आए, and I could see buses stopping and young girls 18-19 going into corners of the in their छोटे मोहल्ले में जब वो निकल रही थी. I myself was so surprised कि इतनी रात को ये लड़कियां अकेले कैसे चली जा रही है. They have created that environment. और मेरी बहुत डिस्कशंस होती थी एंड दे डिड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड. उन दिनों हम लोग बस में थे तो कहते थे, मैम आप बोल रहे हो कि लड़कियां और औरतें आगे से जाते हैं, लड़के लोग पीछे से जाते हैं, फिर ये कैसे, हाउ डू दे टच, हाउ डू दे डू इट. उनके दिमाग में पूरे चाइनीज स्टूडेंट्स के ये कॉन्सेप्ट ही नहीं था कि आप किसी लड़की को छेड़ सकते हो, उसको कुछ बोल सकते हो विदाउट हर दिस थिंग, सो इट इज़ अ लॉट ऑफ आवर कल्चर, इट रिस्ट्रिक्ट्स योर मोबिलिटी। कितने मिथ्स हमने क्रिएट किए हैं कि हार्मलेस है। अरे मुलायम सिंह ने क्या बोला था आपने उसमें असेंबली में, लौंडे तो लौंडे ही रहेंगे, क्या कर सकते हैं। बट वी हैव टू एक्सप्लेन दैट वी आर लुकिंग एट women as temptress, वी आर belittling women। मेरे को अभी भी याद है दैट टाइम 2002 में मैंने जब एक पहला अपना आर्टिकल एक इंटरनेशनल जर्नल के लिए भेजा था, आई यूज द टर्म ईव टीजिंग एंड दे टोल्ड मी एंड दे सेड व्हाट इज ईव टीजिंग। तो I was so surprised. I said, इनको ईव टीजिंग का मालूम नहीं है। Then I explained. They said, oh God, Rekha, couldn't you find a better term than eve teasing? And when I thought about it, yes. When we use the term eve teasing, पूरी हिस्ट्री आप देखिए क्रिश्चियनिटी की, eve is the temptress who forces Adam to eat the apple. So we still continue with those. And lot of this thing, that women are using sex to go ahead and prostitutes cannot be harassed. But this is something which continue. Films ने भी इसको एक बहुत सारा emphasize किया है, कितने myths create किए हैं। कोई भी आप फिल्म देखिए अर्लियर, the most beautiful girl will be harassed much more, क्योंकि और वो नई नई बोलती रहेगी, but she means ultimately yes, and finally she'll fall in love with her harasser. एंड ये इस तरह के मिथ्स बहुत सारे फैलाए गए हैं। वी थिंक दैट women who wear revealing clothes, who are single and divorced, they have the sexual violence much more. एक हमारा जो कल्चर ऑफ साइलेंस है, पूरे कि हम इसके बारे में बात नहीं करेंगे। अब एटलीस्ट पीपल हैव स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट इट। हम लोगों के टाइम में तो यू कुड नॉट इवन मेंशन इट। आज भी बहुत सारे फैमिलीज़ में जहाँ होता है, दे डोंट कम अप एंड स्पीक, एंड वी अंडरस्टैंड दैट इट्स अ वुमेन्स लॉट, शी कैन नॉट डू। ट्रैफिकिंग एक मेजर इशू है। आज जब बहुत सारे फेमिनिस्ट जो कैलकुलेट करते हैं, वो कहते हैं कि ट्रैफिकिंग से बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा आता है, इवन व्हेन कंपेयर टू ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग और ट्रैफिकिंग ऑफ आर्म्स। एंड बहुत अदर जो स्टैटिस्टिक्स है वो कहते हैं कि नो, मैक्सिमम मनी इज़ फ्रॉम ड्रग्स ट्रैफिकिंग, देन आर्म्स ट्रेड एंड देन ट्रैफिकिंग। एंड मैंने अपनी किताब में जो लिखा था, there are 10 people who earn out of this girl who is trafficked. You have a spotter, recruiter, buyer, seller, transporter, harborer, financial, brothel keeper, pimp and client. जब आप आर्म्स ट्रेड में, ड्रग्स ट्रेड में पकड़े जाते हो तो आप जेल के पीछे होते हो, लेकिन जब ट्रैफिकिंग में आप पकड़े जाते हो, जो आदमियों ने उसको ट्रैफिकिंग में डाला उनका तो कहीं नामो निशान नहीं है, आप केवल उस लड़की को पकड़ के जेल में डाल देते हो। सारे वर्ल्ड में आप देखिए, from less developed countries to more developed countries, trafficking is a big business. She is a victim. She becomes accused, helpless. She has debt bondage. She is intimidated. And, I have brought in a lot of statistics in my book on sex trafficking. India में बहुत सारे traditional forms थे. अगर आप देवदासीज को देखो, आज भी जोगिन सिस्टम जो prevalent था कुछ year, now it has stopped. You have Matharama, Domaramas and Basavis who are there. When you look at the Devdasis, so easily in India, आज भी Devdasi system alive है. Karnataka में it is very much there. It is easier for these women to shift into prostitution. अब ये सारे issues को जब हम gender marginalization की बात करते हैं, when we want solutions, whom do we blame? Do we blame the men? Do we blame the women? Or do we blame both men and women? I think we are asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking whom to blame, we should ask what is to be blamed. And this will lead us to a definition of patriarchy, capitalist mode of production, divisions of society in class, caste, base. We have to really talk about, I'm just concluding. I am just concluding. So therefore, we have to really talk about gender sensitization and treat both men and women equally. We have to, what is the way out? We have to re-socialize our context. We have to understand with empathy the gender roles. We have to treat all institutions, everyone has to get together in this, whether it is the family, society, educational institute, market, religion, politics, literature, and only then we will be able to deal with these biases. We need to first recognize that we have biases. I do lot of coaching at the Mari Chinna Reddy, जहाँ सारे IAS officers जो select हो जाते हैं वो आते हैं. We are very polished today. We can speak very well. हमको मालूम है ऐसे हम ऐसे लिखेंगे तो हमको maximum marks मिलेंगे. लेकिन अगर आप probe करो, mindset हमारे change नहीं हुए हैं. So we need to really know first what are our biases, how to deal with these biases, and only then we can bring about a change. So therefore, when we talk of bringing women above marginalization, gender equality, we have to really change the values in our society. Every individual has to take a pledge about their immediate action in private as well as in public. We should learn to measure our masculinity in terms of equality. We can start at home. I keep telling my students, today you feel you are powerless, you can't do anything, but tomorrow you are going to be parents. Let us teach our children, our girls to speak up. Let us teach our boys to, help in breaking this silence. Thank you very much.
Before I request our chief guest, Professor Parvez Nazir, let me briefly introduce Professor Parvez Nazir sir. Professor Parvez Nazir sir has completed his education from Aligarh Muslim University, and then he joined the same university, Department of History, and he's teaching there. He has a lot of, he has a huge experience in the field of research and teaching, almost 20 years, published and presented papers, more than 60 papers. But I will tell you that he specializes in Urdu print culture and media, and he has especially worked on the newspapers, the journals which were published before 1857 or after 1857, and the impact of this print culture on society, polity, on the other aspects of the society. I'm not going to read here the papers which he, or the books which he published, but let me tell you one thing, that he too have a great association with MANUU. He was part of our DD team as a subject expert, and he frequently visited this university. The asylum which we are with the DD people are going to publish, and he's part of that, so he's very active in that. So with this brief introduction, I would like to request Professor Parvez Nazir to give his talk.
Thank you very much for kind words, Dr. Parvez Khande, Chair of today's inaugural session, Professor Sheikh Ishtiaq Ahmed, Professor Yakti Channarao, Professor Rekha Pandeyji, Professor Rafiullah Saab, Professor Deepak Kumar, the source of inspiration for the new generation of historians, because he is still engaged, seriously engaged in reading and writing history, and that too of a very difficult trend, that is science and technology. That is the need of the time. I am thankful, especially thankful to Professor Rafiullah Azmi Sahab for giving me this opportunity to come here and interact and share my ideas with you. The topic on which I'll speak in a very short manner, that is 1857 and participation of subalterns. I have learned by attending the session of Indian National Congress history, the time management. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and sometime, at least in my life, please come and read your title and go. So I know very well the time management, so within a stipulated time, I'll speak. First of all, this talk has broadly speaking, two sections. That is the subaltern classes. I am dealing, the theme of the seminar is, and the second is the 1857, and third is the women who are the marginalized class. It was feared that history in the hands of conventional historians has the danger of becoming unscientific, unprecise, and oblique. Therefore, from time to time, we do find
different school of historiography came into existence. Imperialist school of historiography, then nationalist, I'm talking in context of India, then nationalist, and then subaltern. That is the theme of our seminar and the theme on which I am going to speak. I'll give just a few examples to make you understand, and then I leave. And then the Marxist school of historiography, then now so many complicated and complex the trends, that is the modernism, postmodernism, post-truth, all these are coming. Now, first of all, it was Antonio Gramsci in his prison diary, he coined the idea of subaltern. And afterwards, Ranjit Guha and others took the responsibility and wrote subaltern series of history books. That altered, that changed the entire course of narrative of historiography. And that is most impressive. That is most unique. Unique in the sense, when history was being written from the imperialist point of view, it was all elitism. Nationalists started, they too firmly, strongly believed in elitism. Rather, I should say, they hegemonized the entire contribution and achievement of all the classes they rendered to our freedom struggle. It is very interesting, I should say, that the elite class fought for their power, their position, their dignity, their honor. But it is welcoming gesture. It is welcoming that the subaltern classes fought not for their own self-interest, but they really, truly fought for the cause of the nation, that is the independence of India. But unfortunately, in the history of our country, from all, it was either imperialist, either nationalist, or either any trend that developed in India, they left these classes who dominantly played significant role. This is the subaltern class I am talking about. ये यकीन की दौलत थी. Since I am in MANUU, ये बाबे शहर इल्म है उर्दू ज़बान का, तो therefore ये मुझे खुशी होगी कि मैं कुछ बातें उर्दू में भी आपसे करूं, शेयर करूं. यकीन की ताकत थी जिसने अंग्रेज़ों को, अंग्रेज़ एक ताजिर के तौर पे आए थे हिंदुस्तान में और पूरे हिंदुस्तान को फतह किया. ये यकीन की ताकत थी. यही यकीन और एतमाद जब हिंदुस्तानियों में पैदा हुआ, तो उन्होंने एक ऐसी जंग अंग्रेज़ों के खिलाफ लड़ी जिसका तसव्वुर हम नहीं कर सकते थे. दे वर द माइटिएस्ट ऑफ द माइटिएस्ट. सन नेवर सेट ऑन देयर एम्पायर. और उन्होंने एक, हिंदुस्तानियों ने एक तारीख, वो तारीख क्या थी? आज़ादी. कोई भी सच्चाई 3 मरहलों से गुजरती है. पहला मरहला जब हमने जंग आज़ादी की शुरुआत की थी, ये ट्राइबल्स थे, जिन्होंने जंग आज़ादी की शुरुआत की थी. बिकॉज दे वर द फर्स्ट पीपल who reacted. जब उनकी ज़िंदगी में, उनकी तहज़ीब में, उनके कल्चर में, उनके मज़हब में, उनकी माशी ज़िंदगी, उनकी समाजी ज़िंदगी में जब अंग्रेज़ों ने थोड़ा सा इंटरफेयर करने के लिए कोशिश किया, तो सबसे पहले पावरफुल रेजिस्टेंस ट्राइबल की तरफ से आया. इफ़ यू विल गो एंड सी द हिस्ट्री, पेजेस ऑफ द हिस्ट्री, यू विल फाइंड दिस. I, through going through the researchers' newspapers, I find all these trends. तो ट्राइबल्स ने शुरू किया. तो कोई भी सच्चाई जो है 3 मरहले से गुजरती है. पहला मरहला वो है जब उसका मजाक उड़ाया जाता है. कोई भी सच्चाई, ये सच्चाई थी कि हमने जंग आज़ादी के बारे में सोचा जब फ्राइजी मूवमेंट की इब्तदा हुई, जब वहाबी मूवमेंट की इब्तदा हुई. द मौलवीज आर ऑल्सो, द टू वर ऑन द मार्जिन so far as the independence movement, so far as the struggle for the independence is concerned. दूसरा मरहला जब आया अंग्रेज़ों का, जब ये मूवमेंट टेक ऑफ करने लगा, तो उन्होंने उसकी शदीद मुखालफत की, बहुत शदीद मुखालफत की. उस मुखालफत का एक एग्जाम्पल आप 1857 के गदर से समझ सकते हैं, किस कदर जुल्म व ज़्यादती हुई थी. सर सैयद अहमद ख़ान ने अपनी किताब असबाब बगावत हिंद में, जो आई विटनेस थे, उन्होंने लिखा था कि गोरखपुर से दिल्ली तक कोई ऐसा शहर, पेड़ नहीं था जिस पे हिंदू और मुसलमानों की लाशें न टंगी. तो ये इंतहा थी शदीद मुखालफत की. फिर एक वक्त ये सच्चाई एक तीसरे मरहले में इंटर होती है, जिसे हम कहते हैं कि जब इसको एक हकीकत के तौर पे तस्लीम किया जाता है, और बिल आखिर इसको हकीकत के तौर पे तस्लीम किया गया जब हिंदुस्तान 15 अगस्त 1947 को आज़ाद हुआ। मंगल पांडे को एज ए हिस्ट्री स्टूडेंट और एज ए स्टूडेंट इवन के आम आदमी मंगल पांडे को जानता है। क्यों? 1857 की जो गदर की इब्तदा हुई थी वो वहीं से होती है। मंगल पांडे ने अपने ऑफिसर कैप्टन बाग को शूट किया था, दैट वाज द बिगिनिंग। लेकिन ये कम लोग जानते हैं, ये बहुत कम लोग जानते हैं। ये इसमें एक बहुत दिलचस्प वाक़या है कि इसको शुरुआत जो थी, इसको जिसने इंस्पायर किया था, जिसने इसको स्पार्क दिया था, वो एक लोअर कास्ट का आदमी था, मतादीन भंगी। मतादीन भंगी उस फैक्ट्री में काम करता था जहाँ कारतूस बनते थे। उस कारतूस में सुअर और गाय की चर्बी, इमीडिएट प्रोवोकेशन, कॉज ऑफ द इमीडिएट कॉज ऑफ द रिवोल्ट ऑफ 1857। मतादीन ने जहाँ ये मंगल पांडे पोस्टेड थे उनसे पानी मांगा एक गिलास। मंगल पांडे जाहिर सी बात है ब्राह्मण, उनको लगा कि एक शूद्र हमसे पानी मांग रहा है, ह्यूमिलिएशन फील किया, उन्होंने पानी नहीं दिया। मतादीन भंगी ने कहा कि तुमको शर्म आती है हमको पानी देने में गिलास, लेकिन तुमको शर्म आनी चाहिए कि जो कारतूस बन रहा है इसमें सुअर और गाय की चर्बी है। दिस न्यूज स्प्रेड लाइक ए वाइल्ड फायर एंड द होल इंडियन रेजिमेंट रिवोल्टेड अगेंस्ट द ब्रिटिश। इंस्पिरेशन केम फ्रॉम मतादीन भंगी। दिस वॉज द इंसिडेंट वेयर these people, this section, this subaltern section always excluded. From the 1857 I'll give you another example, that is अजीज़न बाई। एक मशहूर रक्कासा थी, प्रोस्टिट्यूट कह लीजिए, गज़ल गायकी की माहिर थी, लेकिन उसका एक आदमी से, शमशुद्दीन नामी आदमी से उसका इश्क था। 1857 के गदर शुरू हो गया। तांतिया टोपे के लिए वो काम करती थी, बहुत खूबसूरत थी, उनके एजेंट के तौर पे स्पाई इंफॉर्मेशन देती थी। इंफॉर्मेशन मुल्क की खुददारी, मुल्क की बका के लिए वो इंफॉर्मेशन कलेक्ट करती थी और ले जाके देती थी तांतिया टोपे को। एंड तांतिया टोपे अकॉर्डिंगली प्लान फॉर द नेक्स्ट लाइन ऑफ एक्शन। अजीज़न बाई उनको एक दिन जब रिवोल्ट चल रहा था, लोग जोश और जज्बे में लड़ रहे थे, लेकिन शमशुद्दीन जो था वो आइडियल एक इंसान के तौर पे घर पे बैठा रहता था। उसने कहा कि तुम्हें ये एहसास नहीं होता है कि टाइम हमको बता दीजिए, विद इन अ स्टिपुलेटेड टाइम आई विल फिनिश बिकॉज की नोट स्पीकर इज वेटिंग से। तो तुम्हें ये नहीं समझ में आ रहा है कि पूरे लोग मुल्क के लिए कुर्बानी देने का जज्बा रखते हैं, तुम क्यों ऐसे बैठे हो? At that time she challenged his manliness। कहा कि तुम्हें शर्म आनी चाहिए कि तुम एक मर्द, मैं औरत हो के इस जंग में शरीक हो रही हूँ। शमशुद्दीन मैदान जंग में जाता है, बहुत बहादुरी से लड़ता है, वो मर जाता, वो किल कर दिया जाता है, मार दिया जाता है। That made that lady more furious, more violent। और फिर उसने उसी दिन ये अपने दिल में वादा किया कि मैं एक बदला लूँगी अंग्रेज़ों से। देन 2 इंसिडेंट्स होते हैं, दैट इज़ वेरी एक्सक्लूडेड, दैट इज़ मार्जिन से मार्जिन पे ले जाइए किसी प्रोस्टिट्यूट को। आज के समाज में भी उनको कोई मकाम नहीं है। उसने कहा कि मैं इनसे बदला लूँगी, और बहुत ख़तरनाक बदला। सती चौरा घाट और बिबिया घर में सेक्कर, 2 जगह उसने अंग्रेज़ मर्दों औरतों को जमा किया और उसने मरवाया। करीब 150 लोग होंगे जहाँ मरे होंगे। पीपल डजेंट नो the incident, doesn't remember. This is almost ousted from the main narrative of 1857. I have gone through many, at least hundreds of books, लेकिन रेडमेंटी कहीं कहीं ये स्कैंटी इंफॉर्मेशन इसके बारे में मिल जाता है, लेकिन मिलता है। लेकिन these areas are grey areas where these kind of ladies must be included. फिर उसके बाद से the most important thing is that कि वहाँ अंग्रेज़ों ने मेमोरियल बनाया कानपुर। दैट मेमोरियल इज़ फेमस एज ए कानपुर मेमोरियल। वो अंग्रेज़ जो पढ़ा लिखा है, जो इंटेलेक्चुअल है, जो पॉलिटिशियन है अपने मुल्क का, वो आता है तो बहुत ही खामोशी से साइलेंटली जा कर के वहाँ वो खराज अक़ीदत पेश करता है। दूसरा वाक़या मैं आपको एक सुनाता हूँ। पासी कम्युनिटी, हज़रत महल ने ऐलान जंग कर दिया। दिस वॉज इन इटसेल्फ ए ग्रेट इवेंट बिकॉज शी केम आउट फ्रॉम द पैलेस। हरम में रहती थी, लिमिटेड बाउंड्रीज थी, लिमिटेड स्पेस था, लेकिन शी डिटर्मिन एंड शी फॉट, टाइम नहीं है, शी फॉट इन सच अ वे दैट इट इज़ ए हिस्ट्री इटसेल्फ। लेकिन हज़रत महल, दाओ शी इज़ एलीट, लेकिन स्टिल very scantly represented in the narrative of the country, historiography. She must be. उसके लखनऊ में एक कम्युनिटी हुआ करती थी पासी। काफ़ी लोगों ने काम किया है। DS दिवाकर ने एक किताब लिखी है जिसका नाम है स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में क्या अछूतों का, शूद्रों का योगदान। पासी कम्युनिटी का जब मैं अखबारात पढ़ रहा था, जब मैं इस पे अवध पे हिस्ट्री पे पढ़ रहा था, तो मैं देख के दंग रह गया कि पासी कम्युनिटी वाज एक्सपर्ट इन माइनिंग। हज़रत महल के ज़माने में उनको ड्यूटी असाइन होती थी कि आप माइनिंग बिछा दो पूरा, और जहाँ से अंग्रेज़ फौज गुजरे उसको ब्लास्ट करा दो। दैट इन्वॉल्व रिस्क टू देयर लाइफ एज वेल। कब वो बस्ट हो जाए कुछ पता नहीं, इतना डेवलप साइंस नहीं था उस वक्त, लेकिन दे वर स्कैंटली रिमेंबर्ड। लेकिन सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बात यह है कि बैटल ऑफ चिन्हट, जहाँ बागियों की जीत हुई थी, इनकलाबियों की जीत हुई थी, अहमदुल्ला शाह हज़रत महल के कंबाइंड फोर्सेस ने लड़ाई लड़ी थी, उसमें मक्का पासी जो था वो शहीद हो गया। उसकी बीवी थी उदा देवी। उदा देवी ने कहा कि मैं अपने शौहर के डेथ का बदला ज़रूर लूँगी, और उसने बदला लिया। बदला उसने इस तरीके से लिया कि वो एक पीपल की ट्री पे, आज भी उस पीपल की ट्री की तारीख़ अतहर अब्बास रिजवी ने और जब भार्गवा साहब ने किताब लिखी यूपी फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल पे, तो उसमें इसका जिक्र किया है। तो उसमें यह हुआ कि वो पीपल के ट्री पे चढ़ गई विद आर्म। ब्रिटिश फौज उधर से गुजरी, कैंपबेल उसको लीड कर रहा था, और उसने ऊपर से शूट आउट करना शुरू किया। एक वर्जन है हिस्टोरियंस का कि कोई 32 ब्रिटिश सोल्जर्स वर किल्ड, एक वर्जन है कि कोई 36 सोल्जर्स वर किल्ड, but soldiers were killed, innumerable in number. अंग्रेज़ों ने कहा कि ये क्या हुआ। वन इंग्लिश ऑफिसर, मिलिट्री ऑफिसर, उसने पॉइंट आउट कर लिया, उसने शूट किया और धड़ से नीचे गिर। देन दे आइडेंटिफाई इट इज़ नन बट ए वीमेन। व्हाट करेज शी possess, she belonged to the Parsi caste, not recognized their rights, not honored in the society. देन कैम्बेल लिखता है, खुद कैम्बेल लिखता है कि मैं उसके इज्जत में, उसके एहतराम में मैं उसके सामने झुका, उस मुर्दे बॉडी के सामने झुका, बिकॉज ऑफ द करेज। तो देयर वर सो मैनी एग्जाम्पल्स इन द पेजेस ऑफ हिस्ट्री दैट यू विल फाइंड कि हाउ दे फॉट, हाउ दे कंट्रीब्यूटेड, हाउ दे अचीव्ड। एज प्रोफेसर रेखा पांडे पॉइंटेड आउट दैट कि विदाउट द पार्टिसिपेशन ऑफ वीमेन no sustainable development is possible. Similarly, any revolution in the world was not possible without the participation of women. I'll give an example. French Revolution. I'll give an example. Revolt of 1857, which was not less than a revolution. Here, a very simple example, the level of participation. अभी तो 2 मैंने वाक़यात बताए जो फ्रंट पे था। एक वाक़या यह है कि distribution of chapati, that was a message conveyed from village to village, people to people, be prepared for fighting. Now the distribution was the responsibility of men and preparation of it was women. So how this revolution became possible? So in this way we do find, even Kesh Ahmadullah Shah, Molvi, a Sufi, the wonder, he fought like anything. And you know, it is for your surprise, कि 1857 की जंगे आज़ादी में किसी भी बागी के सर पर इतनी बड़ी रकम नहीं रखी गई थी जितना he was the alone. जिनके मारने के लिए एक बहुत बड़ी रकम अंग्रेज़ों ने रखा था कि इनको जो मार देगा उसको ये रकम मिल जाएगी. He sacrificed, he fought like anything. But anyhow, he too was marginalized, too excluded from the main narrative. Even in today, modern world, I am concluding, sir, modern world, we are living in a very so-called civilized world. But we are, if we will, अगर हम क्या कहें उसको अपने आप को इंट्रोस्पेक्शन करें, तो we will find कि how we are uncivilized, how we are barbaric. We are talking in every lofty terms, but before us, in Ukraine and in Gaza, the people are, why they are killed? They are excluded from the main esteem of political life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for presenting, discussing the role of women, especially in the in 19th century India. I too believe that this area has been widely neglected by the historians. I was recently writing an SLM on role of women in freedom struggle. So while searching some books, I couldn't find too much. Very few persons like Charu Gupta has written on that, and sir has also covered up that. Thank you, sir. Now, before I invite our keynote speaker, Professor Y. Chinna Rao, let me best just. Just a moment. Let me introduce you. He is basically a trained historian, but now he is from the last more than 20-25 years. He is working in CSUB-JNU. He is director there. He has worked on Dalit histories, politics, exclusion, education. He has been received many awards, honors in different foreign universities. Not only that, he has published a lot of books, and especially I want to take a name of one book, Labor, Diaspora and Marginality, essays in honor of Professor Sabyasachi Bhattacharya. Sabyasachi Bhattacharya was Professor Chinna Rao sir's supervisor. So with this brief introduction, I would like to request our keynote speaker to give his talk.
I thought of starting this lecture with a good morning wishes, but it became good afternoon. So, to the chair, Professor Ishtiaq Ahmad, Honorable Registrar, to the guest of honor, Professor Parvez Nazir, the other way around, Chief Guest Parvez, and guest of honor, Professor Rekha Pandey ma'am, and other distinguished guests on the dais and off the dais. At the very outset, I am thankful to the organizers for extending the invitation, and especially Professor Azmi Saab and Ishtiaq Ahmad. Let me confess, to begin with, I am not an authority on the subject. But, however, now that I accepted the invitation, I shall share some of my ideas on the theme. And being a last speaker, you have some advantages and some disadvantages. Disadvantages being, since both are well versed, one in women's history, and the other one is pure modern Indian history. And they covered a lot of distance. So there will be hardly anything that I can speak or I can present. But still, I'll try my best not to bore you with any repeated things. This presentation of keynote address is divided into 3 parts. The first part deals with the discourses on the concept of marginality and the marginalization, how various theoreticians and social scientists are viewed the concept. The second part, it deals with the discourse on educational and especially the women's education during late 19th and early 20th centuries. And thirdly, the role of anti-caste intellectuals such as Mahatma Jyotirao Phule and Baba Saheb Ambedkar in women's emancipation, especially in relation to education and welfare of women in relation to the claims to rights from the state. As Professor Rekha Pandey Madam explained, the concept of marginalization can be defined as powerlessness and exclusion felt by a group as a result of an imbalance in control of resources and power structure within a society. The root of social inequality, however, has been unpacked and studied since the advent of Marxist theory. Material resources such as land, labor, capital, and were recognized as the basis for the social conflict and stratification by Marx, Engels, Adam Smith, and other thinkers of the 18th century and 18th and 19th century. The term marginalization emerged among the analysts and the policymakers in the late 20th century. Rather, in the early 20th century, the term marginalization first appeared in the 1920s, as it was coined by Robert E. Park in 1928 in his seminal essay, Human Migration and Marginal Man, found in the Systematic Exposition. The social dimensions of marginalization refers to demography, religion, culture, and social structures such as caste, hierarchy, class, ethnicity, gender, and age, economic and politics of resource access between different people and groups, and the process of displacement. Exclusion, inequality, social injustice, and geographical segregation all are influenced by these dimensions. Thus, marginalization referred to being separated from the rest of the society, forced to occupy fringes and the edges. The marginalization inhibits a person, a group, a section, or a community to enjoy rights, privileges, opportunities, and resources that are normally available to members of the society. It may therefore be considered as a discordant relationship between those who marginalize as compared to those who are being marginalized. Then possibly the term marginalized may be used synonymously with the term oppressed in comparison to the oppressor, as Paulo Freire used in his famous Pedagogy of the Oppressed, or as a proletariat used by Karl Marx, or as subaltern used by Gramsci, or powerlessness as elaborated by Michael Foucault, are exploited, vulnerable, discriminated, disadvantaged, subjugated, socially excluded, alienated, or downtrodden as used elsewhere in the available literature. The feminist scholars have traced the historical process of marginalization of women. During the pre-Vedic period, women enjoyed autonomy, independence, and rights in the society, where they were considered essential and societies were found to be matriarchal. With an advent of Aryan or Vedic culture, the matriarchal social system was replaced by the patriarchal social system. However, women still enjoyed autonomy and the rights and had access to all kinds of knowledge. They were granted rights to avail education, participate in religious activities, and participate in public discussions and debates such as Gargi debating with the Yajnavalkya, etc. In the later Vedic period, the condition of women began to deteriorate. Socio-economically, they were sidelined and denied their basic rights. It is also being said that the women's deterioration, which began in the phase of later Vedic period, was intensified with the strict rules imposed on them. It has been argued that Manusmriti, or the Manu, the social lawgiver, codified all social evils as social norms rather than their abolition. The Shastras, which determined the legal system, created restrictions on various hardships in matters of availing education, right to property, and they believe that women should not be granted freedom and be subjected to male subjugation has thus deep roots. At this point of time, it's very interesting to see how and why the Manusmriti was codified. Many a time, Brahmin commentators have asserted that Manusmriti based on the divine law and is thus a religious book, while seeing the rules and regulations of the book, historical investigation on Manusmriti, the role it serves, its origin dates, and the political system it upholds, it is difficult for a rational person to believe that it's merely a religious book of Hindus. Ambedkar offered a thorough modernist critique of Manusmriti, rejected the theory of divine origin or that of it was revealed to Manu by the creator himself. Ambedkar writes that the author of Narada Smriti and later Meditate also knew these facts but omitted or kept them as a secret till 14th century. Ambedkar further noted that it was Sumati Bhargava who wrote the Code of Manu, as he was not a legendary or a mythical name but a historical person. According to Narada, it was Sumati Bhargava who composed the Code of Manu. It is not coincident that these dates are certainly not far from the counter-revolution launched by the Pushyamitra Sangha. Ambedkar noted that important relations of text, code, or religious texts which have relations with the changing political regime. He said that now, if one bears in mind that fact that Brahminic revolution by Pushyamitra Sangha took place in 185 BC, there remains no doubt that code known as Manusmriti today was promulgated by Pushyamitra as embodying the principles of Brahminic revolution against the Buddhist state of Mauryas. Because Buddhism destroyed the monopoly, hegemony, and fear of Brahmanism among the masses. As a result, people were turning towards Buddhism. Due to this Buddhist revolution, Brahmins were at bay. As they became powerless, their source of livelihood reduced as a result of Buddhist rationalist attack on Brahminic beliefs and practices. This was the reason why the Brahmins or Brahminical counter-revolution against Buddhism and through political power reinstated its authority. As a sacred, legal, and religious text, Manusmriti upholds sanctity of Brahmanism and speaks of hatredness against the Buddhism. This was sharply visible in Manusmriti's many anti-Buddhist provisions and enactments. The Manusmriti was written as a religious, legal document and a political document to uphold supremacy of the Brahmins and to uphold the Brahmins' rule. It had laid down the idea and legislation of Brahmin as the supreme being and made it as the duty of the king to uphold supremacy of the Brahmins and the Brahminical order. Ambedkar pointed out that the possibilities of writing Manusmriti under command of Pushyamitra Sangha himself, which later became the philosophy and the penal code of Brahmanism. While bringing all these shreds of evidence, interlinked textual and analogical explanation, Ambedkar concluded that the object of the counter-revolution was to establish Brahmanism as a supreme ideology and the destruction of Buddhism through its roots. The medieval period witnessed the origin of many religious customs that suppressed and marginalized women and continued until the early 20th century. During the 19th century, the emancipation of women from traditional social practices such as custom of sati, widow remarriage, child marriage, Devadasi system, which was degrading of the status of women, was given importance and many corrective steps were taken in this direction. It may be useful to situate the issue of women's education in a broader context of discourses of education as it developed in that segment of history in colonial India. As in other social formations, education may be viewed as a social process which maintains status quo and the traditional pattern of domination, insofar as the education serves as an instrument of idealization and transmitting and controlling knowledge in a manner consistent with the maintenance and preservation of socio-political order. In colonial India, the contestation occurred around two focal points. On the one hand, the asymmetry of colonial metropolitan relationship, in particular in its aspect of cultural hegemony and cognitive authority of the rulers over the ruled. And on the other, the subordinate, superordinate, hegemony and hegemonized relationships within Indian society, in particular at the interface between caste and class and gender inequalities with the discourse of education. Such a theoretical approach allows us to analyze a colonial Indian educational discourse as a set of ideas and practices which are shaped by the objectives of the various participants in the educational process either to preserve or to contest the homeostasis or status quo in those relations. The issue of women's education is to be located in this broader context. An alternative way of looking at it visualizes the gender discourse as an autonomous arc that interests with the educational discourse almost randomly in a space that is devoid of other contestations around caste, class, or imperial homogeneous. The latter at best recognized as incidental presence, not considered as a status in the explanatory scheme. In some form or the other, the role of education as an instrument of colonial hegemony has been recognized in historical research. For instance, Martin Corney, Education as a Cultural Imperialism, or Philip Altbach or Gail P. Kelly, Education and Colonialism, or Aparna Basu's Growth of Education and the Political Development in India, or Krishna Kumar's Political Agenda of Education, the study of colonialist and nationalist ideas, or we have a living legendary, Professor Deepak Kumar, who has been working for little more than 3 decades on Science and the Raj, or Technology and the Raj, which has completed 30 years of his first book, or the only attempt with the theoretical interest locating the conflict in educational ideas within the social discourse of inequality or marginalization in India is Nigel Crook's essay with reference to Bordeaux's 1973 General Theoretical Observations that Sociology of Education viewed as reproduction process. In other words, the colonial education regime is a means of preservation and reproduction of colonial authority among the natives and the colonized country on the one hand, and this is best reflected in the curricular content of secondary and tertiary education, emphasizing British sovereignty, the greatness of the British Empire, the benefit brought by Pax Britannica to Indian subjects, and generally to the civilizational advancement and the modern West over the rest of the world. The opposition to this program of colonial hegemony came from nationalist intelligentsia in the form of critique of the colonial intellectual hegemony and the program of national education in various incarnations. Hence, nationalist curricular focused on traditional Indian culture and values and underlining critique of British policies in India, the representation of Indian civilization as superior, and institutional experiments ranging from national schools in 1905 to gurukulas and varieties of ashrams till 1930s. While the contest between the two trends appeared on the surface, there was another contestation underlying the parallel to this, originating the inherent inequalities of cultural tensions in Indian society. Challenges to that hegemonizing ideology reflected in the educational program were posed. Jyotirao Phule wrote in a memorandum to Education Commission in 1882 how he established female schools in 1851, I quote, in which my wife and I worked for many years. I also established indigenous mixed school for the lower classes, especially Mahars and monks. I wrote some years ago a Marathi pamphlet exposing the religious practices of Brahmins and adverted therein the present system of education, which, by providing ampler funds for the higher education, funded to educate Brahmins and higher classes only, and to leave the masses wallowing in ignorance and poverty. Then Phule translated some passages from his Marathi pamphlet and went on to argue that Machiavellian idea of filtration from the higher to lower order in a society failed to produce results in India. We asked the friends of Indian universities to favor us with a single example of truth of their theory. How have they begun to act upon the masses? Upon what grounds it is asserted that best way to advent moral and intellectual welfare of the people is to raise the standard of instruction among the higher classes. Phule suggests that the main focus should be on primary education of the masses, whose want of self-reliance their dependence upon the learned and intelligent classes, is to attribute to this deplorable state of education among the peasantry. Even in theory, the Brahmins or the Purvs, the hereditary classes who generally live by occupation of pen, and trading classes seeks primary education. In villages, most of the cultivating classes hold aloof, owing to their extreme poverty, and also because of they require their children to tend cattle and look after their fields. The Mahars, monks, and other lower classes are practically excluded from all schools owing to caste prejudices, as they are not allowed to sit by their children of higher castes. In conclusion, I quote, not me, it's Fule's. In conclusion, I beg to request the Education Commission to be kind enough to sanction measures for the spread of female primary education on a moral, liberal scale, unquote. One can also cite the example of Pandita Ramabai, like Phule, offered an Education Commission suggestion in September 1882, mainly to the effect that the government must be more responsive to women's need for education, especially in the area of teaching and medicine. As has been pointed out in a perspective study on Pandita Ramabai's life and time by Uma Chakravarti, Jyotirao Phule was the only defender of Ramabai when all the liberal social reformers of Maharashtra denounced her conversion to Christianity. Ramabai has been more often quoted than Phule, and let us get acquainted with a lesser known critique of traditional patriarchal attitude to women's education. In 1917, Miss Eleanor MacDougall, the first principal of Women's Christian College of Chennai, what we call it now, is in Madras then, insisted that a thorough mental training of women beyond ideal of a good wife or mother, and she was equally insistent on the agency of women in deciding that their education should consist of education will not make much progress if a woman is to be confined to such learning as the men of her locality think suitable for her. Women educated on the curriculum that imparts mental training, however rudimentary, I quote, will in time will be available to supersede it and the better one thought out by ourselves. This MacDougall opposed to the control of female education by local communities, which will not include women for a long time to come. And the Indian men are not yet capable of realizing women's point of view. Therefore, she argues, local communities of men are not fit to decide on the contents of women's education, for they would want a curriculum where intellectual training would in nearly every case be made subordinate to instruction in practical and ornamental accomplishment. If women are to emerge from the narrow and dependent life that has been their lot, they need intellectual training, which is not desired by even a supporters of women's education, who entertain a dread of thorough mental training for women and insist that ideal good wife and a mother. It is forgotten that an educated aptitude in promoting the physical welfare of husband and children does not constitute a woman a good wife and a mother, and mental qualities are needed. MacDougall might have shared some of the prejudices of English bureaucrats in India, but her evaluation of the scheme was not far different from Pandita Ramabai's. On the whole, it seems that available research on the subject suggests that crude concept of agencyhood, which represents 19th century women, were mere pawns in the male hands, needs to be modified. Likewise, the idea that early nationalist discourse on education led to a dead end is also being modified. The conclusion that Carol Mukhopadhyay and Susan Seymour arrives at seems to be a correct evaluation of the present state of our knowledge. I quote, 19th century social reformers wanted to raise women's status by means of education, but without overtly jeopardizing their patriarchal values or values biased in favor of patriarchal system. In many respects, they succeed. Women's education has been constrained and modulated so as to reinforce tradition rather than to challenge it. Nonetheless, there is also an evidence that the seeds of change have been sown. Educating women has produced a number of unanticipated consequences as well as the ones that 19th century social reformers desired. During the early decades of the 20th century, the many debates on discourses regarding women's question during national movement. There are many works that deals with how the nationalists debated about the women's emancipation in general and women's education in particular. However, that is, what is less known is around this period, the role of Ambedkar towards emancipation of women against their marginality status is not only an interesting but an important too. According to Ambedkar, the reason for the decline of women's status was patriarchal system based on the Code of MANUU, where women were kept in the confinement of the house, where they lived their life according to the dictates of men. Women were not allowed to read or chant Vedic mantras or to acquire primary education. Ambedkar demonstrated that deep interconnectedness between both gender and caste in his conceptions of caste patriarchy, and especially drew attention to consciousness as they drew economic and productive side of working women. Ambedkar made a proposal that maternity leave pay ought to be borne by the government. For this purpose, he introduced the Maternity Benefit Bill in Bombay Legislative Council for the first time in India in 1928 and argued that, I quote, "It is in the interest of the nation that the mother ought to get certain amount of rest during prenatal period and also consequently. The burden of this ought to be borne by the government." Ambedkar's step for the welfare of working women through the monetary bill, the maternity bill, proved to be a milestone in the history of women's liberation movement. Afterwards, the Madras Legislative Council also passed the similar bill in 1934, followed by the Calcutta Presidency. Ambedkar fought for the women's reproductive options, reproductive control, reproductive freedom, and rights. Even today, women worldwide, even in the most developed countries, are struggling to convince their regressive and misleading leadership to give birth control. Ambedkar, as early as 1938, fought for the women's rights of birth control. He was ahead of his times and with a great progressive ideas. Although Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi has realized the necessity of birth control as early as 1925, but firmly believed that brahmacharya is the only way to achieve birth control. In 1937, National Planning Committee recommended restricting the birth of children considering the interest of social economy, happiness of the family, and national planning. Subhash Chandra Bose also talked about the population control policy during his presidential address to the Congress Party in 1938. He said, "If the population goes up by heaps and bounds, as it done in the recent past, that is after 1931 census, our plans are likely to fall through. All the interests remained limited to population control and national planning, but there was a less concern about the mother's health with a birth control." Ambedkar was perhaps the only person who drew immediate attention to issues of health of women. Between 1942 and 1946, as a Viceroy Executive Committee member, Dr. Ambedkar proposed various reformist laws to uplift working women's conditions. These laws dealt with compensation in case of injury and pension, privilege leave, casual leave, and earned leave. In the Indian Constitution, Dr. Ambedkar ensured recognition of Indian women's rights that were not even available for women in Europe or in America. Neither were such rights were even demanded till then by the women workforce of India, thus not adequate awareness of effects of its implementation. It is an excellent achievement of Indian Constitution that without any feminist movement, demonstration, struggle, only on the basis of principle of justice and equality, Ambedkar prepared a vision document which in its essence responds to the problems of the future. Similarly, the Hindu Code Bill also had a great vision of what Dr. Ambedkar wanted, to give an equal right to women of the nation in ancestral property and other rights. The Hindu Code Bill was the most important measure for a new India. The bill proposed was, put both sexes on an equal ground on all juridical subjects. Dr. Ambedkar quotes Edmund Burke, the great political philosopher who wrote an outstanding text, against the French Revolution, said, I quote, "Those who wanted to conserve must be ready to repair. And all I am asking this House, that if you want to maintain the Hindu system, Hindu culture, Hindu society, do not hesitate to repair where repair is necessary. The bill asks for nothing more than to repair those parts of Hindu system which have been dilapidated." I unquote. Despite every effort, when Hindu Code Bill could not be passed, Ambedkar was very disappointed. Due to this, Ambedkar also decided to resign from his post as a first law minister of free, independent India. He wrote a letter to the then Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, on 27th September 1951, by saying that, "For a long time I have been thinking of resigning my seat from the cabinet. The only thing that held me back from giving effect to my attention was the hope that it would be possible to give an effect to Hindu Code Bill before the life of the present Parliament came to an end. I even agreed to break the bill and restricted it to marriage and divorce in the fond of hope at least this much of our labor may bear fruit. But even that bill has been killed. I see no purpose of my continuing to be a member of your cabinet." After Ambedkar's resignation, the same Hindu Code Bill broken into 4 parts and was passed in the Parliament in 1956 with many changes and modifications. Finally, to conclude, echoing the ideas of James Mill, the colonial historian, Ambedkar strongly believed that the power of women and observed, I quote, "I measure the progress of community by the degree of progress which women had achieved. Let every girl who marries stand by her husband, claim to be her husband's friend and equal, and refuse to be his slave. I am sure if you follow this advice, you will bring honor and glory to yourself." Thus, from the dependent and a negative subject, women have emerged as a significant equal entity in Indian state. This long history, which is a complex and diverse, needs to be reconstructed from the perspectives that enrich and reflect the distinct nature of marginality and the contesting debates and politics in terms of India's own intellectual and cultural history. Given the women are the main link and central to structures and processes of caste patriarchy, there remains a huge area to develop and redefine concepts of marginality and exclusion and inclusion from the Indian experience. While such an endeavor is primarily calling for a multidisciplinary perspective, any such attempt should also reflect the contribute for further understanding and theorizing the nature and forms of marginalization in the Indian context. Thank you so much for patiently listening.
So, thank you, sir, for your talk. Without taking too much time, we are already very late. I would like to request our chair, Professor Sheikh Ishtiyaq Ahmad, for his final comments. Sir.
आप कुछ बोलेंगे? आप बोलेंगे कुछ? Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to share with you that tomorrow, some of our buildings, it is called project, that has been completed in the past 3-4 years and is ready to shifting and inauguration and all that. The first is School of Business and Commerce Management. Professor Sanim Fatma is here. Second, our engineering workshop building. And third, our Cuttack campus polytechnic at Cuttack. These 3 buildings tomorrow has to be inaugurated by Honorable Prime Minister through video conference.
So we are badly into that, many things still not clear. Every moment we are getting one or the other thing cleared. Many IITs, IIM, central universities, they all are asking many points, and I shared all those with Professor Rafiullah Sahab, since I had promised to come, but I said that if I come and if the need be, I will immediately go away. But thanks God that I could attended larger part of the inaugural session, and I'm still coordinating on those things. That's why I missed some part of our keynote speaker's presentation, and I completely missed our friend Professor Nazir Sahib, Parvez Nazir Sahib presentation. So I'm extremely sorry for that. But it's really a great moment for us that the Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy is organizing this 2-day national seminar on very important theme, that is exploring dynamics of women's marginalization in India, challenges and prospect. And in this seminar, noted academicians and experts like Professor Rekha Pandey. She is well known for her contribution to this particular area. She has joined. I am very thankful to you, madam. Again, our friend, senior friend, Professor Chinna Raoji, somebody called him Chinna Reddy. So I said it's okay. Both Reddy and Rao are important. So Professor Chinna Rao is a very committed historian. And let me share that he is it can be said that founder faculty member when these social exclusion and inclusive policy or program was initiated by the UGC Grant Commission. I think JNU was the first to get this, and immediately, a good number of the centers were established. And luckily, we have this, exclusive center at Maulana Azad National Urdu University also. So it's a privilege that, founder member as well as director of CSEP is here at our center, our CSEP. So a very warm welcome to you, sir. You agreed for a keynote speaker, really at a very, very short notice, and you happily accepted. I am very thankful to you that Professor Rafiullah Azmi Sahab located you, and he became very happy that it will be done by, man of the field along with Professor Rekha Pandey. Thank you very much. And our friend Professor Parvez Nazir Sahib is a very committed historian, dynamic writers. We know all of us. He comes frequently to MANUU in our Directorate of Distance Education as well as in various academic deliberations, seminar and conference and workshop. He needs no introduction, but his works are very important. He has really worked on some of the important areas. I am thankful to you also for accepting our invitation. Off the dice, our task is more difficult that our very senior, our gurus are off the dice like Professor Deepak Kumarji and Professor Imtiaz Hasnain Sahib. I am really very, very happy to see that both our Guruji is attending and they are part of this, deliberation. And there are 8 to 9 technical sessions, and their guidance, their perspective will matter more for our research scholar, our young teachers, and for all of us. So welcome you, sir, both of you especially, and Professor Danish Moin Sahib, Professor Afroz Sahib, Professor Sanim Fatma, Professor of Islamic Studies, Professor Habib Sahib, Dr. Sabana Kaisar, Dr. Qamar, Dr. Abu Taha, Dr. Kareem, and many young faculty members. I know them personally, but I am missing their names, and research scholars, guest faculties, and dear students. Today seminar, as I said, it's very important in the sense that we are exploring a very important area. Area in the sense that, you know, what Professor Rekha pointed out is very important, that, you know, in the past, maybe say 30 to 40 years, there had been several changes. The whole perspective has changed in the university campuses and even in the cities. And I find that the South, especially, you know, maybe Hyderabad, Pune, Bangalore, these cities are doing fairly well as far as, you know, perspective pertaining to the girls स्टूडेंट. जैसा वाकया वो बता रही थी कि हमें कॉलेज जाने में कितना वक्त लगता था, क्या होता था. मैं खुद एक इंसिडेंट रिकॉल किया. प्रोफेसर नज़ीर साहब हैं, अफरोज़ साहब हैं, इम्तियाज़ साहब भी हैं, इंडोर्स करेंगे. मैं खुद फैकल्टी ऑफ आर्ट्स के सामने जो रोड है, मैं देखता था कि जब लड़कियां अब्दुल्ला कॉलेज की साइकिल्स पे जाती थीं तो लड़के भी साइड से मज़ा लेते हुए वीसी लॉज तक जाते थे. ये एक रियलिटी है. लेकिन आज कोई डेयर नहीं कर सकता इस तरह की हरकत करने का. आई मीन ऑल कैंपसेज आर वेरी, पर्सपेक्टिव काफ़ी चेंज हुआ. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एरिया की तरफ आपने इशारा किया. वीमेंस का हेल्थ जो एक इम्पॉर्टेंट फैक्टर है, ख़ासतौर पे वो बीड़ी इंडस्ट्री की तरफ, उस तरह की चीज़ों को हम लोगों ने भी देखा है. कारपेट इंडस्ट्री की तरफ, मिर्ज़ापुर की तरफ कुछ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के प्रोजेक्ट को इवैल्यूएट करते देखा है कि वीमेन कितना थ्रेटेंड है, उनकी सेहत, ख़ासतौर पे हेल्थ किस तरह से अफेक्टेड होती है. उनका जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है एक तरह से उस एरिया के इकनॉमी के लिए, वो कितना इम्पॉर्टेंट होता है. आपका जो ये खास वंडरफुल रिसर्च है, आपका पब्लिकेशन है, really it is very interesting for us, and I request our younger colleagues and research scholar to go through those you know, research. Unless we utilize that, unless we you know, look into that, it will not be fair on our part to know the core issues and do justice with you know, those researches. So thank you very much, madam. You really presented very good points as far as, you know, gender equity is concerned. Your perspective was very different and very thought-provoking presentation to me. And I will also, I have noted and I will read your book certainly. It's a very meaningful book, and hope this will help us in further identifying those issues. It's very clear that you know, participation of women in all spheres of life, especially in education, is very important, in the sense without education the empowerment is very difficult. There is sea change as far as education providing opportunity in the different sphere of life is concerned, but with education only, the remarkable share, their share as far as the job sector is concerned, is very important. In order to provide this opportunity, I mean, if they get the better opportunity in the job sector through education, they can really contribute well, and their participation and empowerment will be the real one. This, you know, in the past 2 decades, we have seen that a lot more are seriously done by the various initiatives taken by the various organizations, NGOs, as well as the government of India. Madam rightly pointed out that there is a sea change in the past 20 years. 2006 के जो डेटा थे और जो आज के डेटा हैं, उसमें काफ़ी फ़र्क है. ये हमारे लिए खुशी की बात है कि इस संजीदगी के साथ इन चीज़ों पे काम किया जा रहा है. प्रोफेसर चिन्ना राव साहब ने का पेपर जो था वो रियली वेरी एकेडमिक था, टेक्निकल था, एक बड़े हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव में था. इशूज़ को, डेवलपमेंट को उन्होंने जिस तरीके से पेश किया है वो काबिल सिताइश है. मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि उनका जो प्रेजेंटेशन है उसको हम लोग प्रिंट करेंगे, या सीसेप्स के डायरेक्टर साहब को मैं रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ कि आप उसको ज़रूर प्रिंट कीजिए, चाहे जिस फॉर्म में हो, सो दैट या अपने वेब पेज पे डालिए, अपने सेंटर्स के इस पे रखिए उसको, ताकि उसको PDF फॉर्म में हमारे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हमारे स्टूडेंट और सभी लोग उससे इस्तेफादा कर सकें. मैं शुक्रगुजार हूँ आप सबों का. मैं ज़हनी तौर पे बहुत सारी चीज़ों में इन्वॉल्व था, उसके बावजूद भी मैंने वादा किया था, मैं आया, मुझे अच्छा लगा. और ये उम्मीद करता हूँ ये 2 रोज़ा जो सेमिनार है, ढेर सारे टेक्निकल सेशंस हैं. मैंने देखा कोई 25 लोग पेपर प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं, अदर देन दी चेयर्स, यानी 7-8 चेयर्स भी हैं, मॉडरेटर्स भी हैं, हमारे गेस्ट फैकल्टीज़ हैं, रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स हैं, काफ़ी लोग हैं. और जो थीम्स हैं ये बहुत वंडरफुल हैं. इसको बहुत ही हमारे रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स हैं जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं उसको सीरियसली पार्टिसिपेट करने की ज़रूरत है, एंड इट विल बी वेरी हेल्पफुल टू ऑल ऑफ यू, एंड आवर पर्पस will be served behind holding such deliberation. And I do hope that we can come out with a good publication as far as those presentation is concerned. So thank you very much to all of you, and wish you all the best for 2 days deliberation.
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू। इससे पहले कि मैं फरा जाफरी को बुलाऊं वोट ऑफ थैंक्स के लिए, मैं एक छोटा सा अनाउंसमेंट करना चाहूँगा कि जो स्टूडेंट हैं उनको रिफ्रेशमेंट यही मिलेगा और फैकल्टी के लिए चाय बाहर होगी, और लेकिन हम जल्दी ही अपना नेक्स्ट टेक्निकल सेशन शुरू करने वाले हैं। अब मैं फरा जाफरी से रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा कि वो वोट ऑफ थैंक्स प्रेजेंट करें।
Good afternoon to all of you. Okay. I, Farah Jafri, research scholar from the Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy. I am glad to be standing here to express my vote of thanks. First and foremost, our deepest appreciation goes to our distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Yagati Chinnarao, Director CSIP JNU, whose insights and expertise have enriched our understanding and inspired us to think critically about exploring dynamics of women marginalization in India, challenges and prospects. Your valuable contribution have truly elevated the quality of this conference. I also place my deepest gratitude to our guest of honor, Professor Rekha Pandey, formerly with Department of History, University of Hyderabad, for gracing the occasion and always giving her full support in any of the academic event we organize. Ma'am, thank you so much for delivering such a useful and inspiring lecture for all of us here. I also benefited from your lecture as I am working on the status of women in border conflict areas of Jammu and Kashmir. A special thanks to our guest of honor, Professor Parvez Nazir, for accepting our invitation and for being here with us today. Your thoughts have truly inspired us. I also wish to express my gratitude to our registrar, sir, for always providing encouragement and support. And I am very grateful to our director, CSIP, Professor Rafiullah Azmi, sir, for giving us an opportunity to organizing this event. Now, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for gracing us with your presence and making this conference a huge success. Thank you so much.
हाँ, थैंक यू फरा। अब मैं टेक्निकल टीम से गुजारिश करूँगा कि वो नेशनल एंथम प्ले करें। Thank you.